slide shows the comparison between Frankenstein and the theme isolation, Frankenstein in comparison to the Hobbit. For people who don't know, the Hobbit is the movie Hobbit is about a small man who set out on an adventure, joined by Gandalf the Great. Now, Gandalf the Great, he is known as the Almighty Wizard. His famous line is, "None shall pass," which I think is pretty funny because he lets anyone pass at all. Well, then he is not alone on this journey. He recruits a hobbit. The hobbit's name is Bilbo, but we don't need to go into him. He just lives inside a hill, basically in isolation, but we're not comparing him to Frankenstein. For a little bit tidbit of information, there's a total of 13 dwarves. I'm going to go in a little bit here so you can see all 13 dwarves. And their names is Dwalin, Balin, Bifur, Bofer, Bomber, Glowin, Owen, Killy, and Philly, Dory, Ori, and Nori. That's a lot. 13 to be exact. Well, the movie plot that I'm choosing is the first beginning of the whole entire movie, because that's when we get to introduce the character that we're actually doing. But he goes through the forest, Great Plains, and some mountains, and then he finally gets to a cave. But I know that doesn't seem exciting at all, but if you were in a forest and you saw this kind of creatures, you'll be like, get the heck out. But they keep on going. And then they meet the orcs. I think that's what they're called. But they are basically this ugly race that basically is writing basically what us humans refer to as wolves. This is them. I know, very ugly. Now I couldn't. Oh wait, nope, never mind. I did find it. Now the mountains are a different story. The mountains turn on to these big giant creatures, are basically like gonna be sucker punching each other for like a big mountain fight when all the thunder's gonna strike. Now this big guy right here it looks like a mountain, but it turns to be the king of the whole entire mountain. So with that being said, the person I like to compare to Frankenstein being isolated is known as Frodo. But Frodo didn't turn into the one that I'm talking about. The one I'm talking about is Gollum. Now, this little guy, this ugly little misfortunate man, is Gollum. Yay, Gollum! Gollum was originally named Frodo. Then he got possessed by the magic ring. As he puts it, the precious! We must have the precious! And so, with that being said, let's get on to the comparison. The comparison with Frankenstein is that he's isolated. He says that he doesn't really belong. In chapter 12, he says, "At first I started back, unable to believe that it was indeed I who was reflected in the mirror, and when I became fully convinced that I was in reality the monster that I am." So he's basically isolated from all of humanity and all that humankind. So he basically put himself into the category of a monster. The second quote I want to do is for another Frankenstein. I looked into it, and the cottagers are basically the only thing that comes in somewhat contact with them. And he says, "When I looked around, I saw and heard of none like me. Was I, then, a monster, a blot upon the earth from which all men fled, and whom all whom all men disowned. I cannot describe to you the agony. No, that's not part of it, my bad. And that is from chapter 13. Now to the comparison of Frankenstein and Gollum. Frankenstein has those books. I could not find a quote, but those books are basically his precious. Gollum, on the other hand, has a ring. Now, as far as location-wise, Frankenstein is in that small little cottage. That small little home away from any civilization, just coming in contact whenever he goes out. Gollum is the same case. Gollum lives in this cave. Now I'm going to show you a video, which is a quote that I'm going to use, is that he doesn't get very many visitors. So this guy right here has fallen down from above, from the Goblin Lord thing. So if you watch the movie, you'll understand. But here's the quote. That is Bilbo. The one that dragged away was one of the golems. So, I'm going to stop it there. That's the precious ring. That's his only real friend besides himself. Yes, he does talk to himself, but he's basically isolated. Only contact he comes in was people who fell down from above from the caves. And so, Gollum is very isolated from the rest of humanity, probably because he wants to protect the precious, which is his ring. So, Frankenstein and Gollum are basically the same in isolation, only to come in contact when either he goes out and goes find someone, or Gollum's case, someone falls from down below. And with that, that is my presentation. I will post sources to the comment section. Bye.